That's something I was always wondering, Strick, is what was like the timeline? Say you have an afternoon game versus like a night game. What's your daily schedule like? What time does your day get started? When do you start the, pregame process, the routine for you?
Well, it depends, because really sometimes it also depends on the coach. I can say that we started off, I think I want to say we only won like 20 something games on the first half when I was with the Dallas Mavericks. The last year I was there before I got traded. Don Nelson comes and takes over, and he operates on a different schedule. Very player oriented. Don liked to go to the bar and drink on his drink and smoke his cigars. And a lot of times he'd be like, we'd be on a back-to-back. And normally a normal coach, a regular coach would be like, shoot around in the morning at 9 a.m., blah, blah, blah. So it would depend on the type of sleep, what you knew you had to do the next game, who you were playing. It would be different if I was playing a certain player or I needed to get some rest because it was Michael Jordan or somebody like that, right? So you would have that factor. But Don Nelson would be like, see you guys at the bus, be there at 3 o'clock to go to the gym. First bus at 3 something, second bus at 4 something. So it would depend. Other coaches, it would be like shoot around. You would have a specific routine. So it would depend on that. So your mornings could change. It was also different when I played in Boston. That Boston team with me, Antoine Walker, Kenny Anderson, Tony Batiste, Vitaly Potapinko, Erick Williams, Antoine Walker, that team, it was a fun team to play for. It was very structured. But there would be nights that we would land in Miami after a back-to-back. We went out one night. I specifically remember a night where we played Atlanta the night before. We had a back-to-back in Miami. That was still, I think Dwayne Wade was on that team. I want to say it was Alonzo Mourning. Tough team. They were tough. They just still hadn't figured themselves out yet. And we got there, and literally we went to the club. We literally landed, I want to say it had to be 1 o'clock. We went out to eat. We went to the club. We was in the club. We walked out, the sun was coming up. And we went out and played that night and beat the brakes off of them. So, I mean, it just depends. It really does. It really depends.
See, that's impressive for me to hear that, because I've always heard that the Miami nightlife is undefeated. But you guys beat it. Sounds like you did it. That's impressive.
Yeah, we really did. I'm telling you, when we kind of were sitting there having a good time. It was a team event. We were all a team. And we got to the point where we're like, man, we got to go. And so we walked out, and there was still a line. When I tell you, Austin, there was still a line out the street, down the block half a little bit at 6 a.m.
I can't tell if people are getting their night started late or their morning started really early.
Right. Whichever one it is, it didn't matter.
I won't ask you names for the people you didn't game plan against as much, but who are some of the toughest people that you knew you had to get your sleep in and make sure you were ready for work the next morning? And who are some of the teams you may be like, I can sleep in a little bit?
So some of the teams back then that you kind of definitely it wasn't Sacramento. It never was the Lakers because, it was going to be a Kobe Bryant matchup or something like that. I would say it was teams like, at that time, it was teams like Cleveland. It was teams like Washington, D.C., it was Orlando at that time. That was after Shaq and that crew, Penny Hardaway and that group. It was like Orlando, Atlanta. When I played with the Knicks, the funny thing about Atlanta was Atlanta, when we showed up, when I was playing with the Knicks, we had more fans than the Atlanta Hawks had, which was crazy. It was like a New York Knicks takeover. And I think because Atlanta is such a transient city that a lot of people, would come from New York or come from other places, DC and other places like that. So those would be some of those teams. Guys that I had to kind of make sure I prepare for. I really had trouble with Nick Van Exel. Nick Van Exel was really tough. Because he was just so herky-jerky. He just didn't know. He didn't have a pattern to his game. Obviously, Allen Iverson was one of those guys where I said, let me get some sleep. Reggie Miller, Rip Hamilton, guys like that who are going to be running for days. They were really tough. So guys like that where I knew I was going to be running off 100 screens and they never stop running. They don't feel like they got tired. Guys like that were a problem.
Favorite home arena, favorite road arena?
I think that my favorite home arena ended up being the Boston Celtics TD Garden.
Oh, TD, okay.
They used to, before we played our game, they used to play Guns N' Roses. And it was, welcome to the jungle. We got fun and game. And the crowd would be going crazy. And the lights would be flickering. And it got us so hyped, right? So that was a fun arena. It was a really tough place. People did not like to play us in that time when we played there. I would say another home one was the old Forum. Not the whatever it's called now, Crypto Arena. No, not the Staples Arena. I'm talking about the Forum. Where you saw everybody, you saw the actresses, everybody was like on their own model runway. They was walking around. You might have to tell the ball boy, this is one of those things, this little inner secrets. We used to tell the ball boys when we saw something we liked, we'd be like, yo, go send her my number. That one over there. You see that one? Go send her my number. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so
awesome.
That was always fun. And listen, and it was way better than playing in Clipperville, because Clipperville used to be played at the old Coliseum. So the Forum and the Coliseum, before they merged and they were playing together. So those were some of the differences there. But now the places where I hated to play, I did not like playing in Utah. I didn't like playing here. Yeah, I didn't like playing in Utah. I thought also Cleveland's arena was so dark. It was like, like playing at night. It felt like dingy in there, right? Some of those places I did not like. And I did not like playing at the old Alamo Dome just because it was just so spacious. And I had trouble with the depth perception and stuff like that. So those were some of the places I didn't like playing.
It's funny you mentioned the Alamo Dome, Strick, because the Spurs are headed back there tonight. They're hosting the Warriors there, and they're supposed to break the all-time single game attendance record. That's the other thing, too. I mean, you mentioned just how big that Alamo Dome is. Now we're playing Final Fours in football stadiums. I mean, Syracuse playing in the Carrier Dome. That's bizarre. Why wouldn't you play your highest level of the sport, whether it's, March Madness, the NCAA tournament, or it's just an NBA game, the highest level of the sport? Wouldn't you want that in a basketball arena? That's something that guys are used to for the best possible product?
Yeah, I think so. I just think that they're doing it a little bit different. A lot of times you like that intimacy too, because you think about it, as you get up into those top tiers, it's, you look like little men. Like people used to say to me all the time, they're like, dang, Strick, I didn't realize you was that big. You know what I mean? Because they're like, they're so used to looking at you from a distance that you look so tiny, and then you're standing next to Shaq and or Yao Ming, and they're like, wait a minute, that guy looks like a midget, right? And then they get up on you and they're like, wait, dang, I didn't realize. And they say the same thing about Steve Nash. They like, dang, I didn't know Steve was that big. You know what I'm saying? Like Steve's 6'2". You know what I'm saying? So you just look so small when you're out there with those other groups. And so, yeah, I can understand
that. I think that's interesting too, based on some of the new arenas versus the older arenas. Like some of them have been updated. I've been down to Kansas. I've been to Fog Allen. That's not a huge place. No. That's a small place. It gets loud. I mean, Cameron Indoor only seats 8,000 versus, I'm impressed by PBA, the way Husker fans fill that up when there's a big game, because that's a bigger arena that they use for basketball. It works very well for basketball. Yeah. But I remember even, not that my playing experience holds anything like a candle to yours, but some of the most fun I had was playing basketball at Elkhorn Mount Michael. Small gym, students are standing right there on the floor. There's just something about that intimate space where you're right on top of each other. You can really feel the energy of the crowd.
I'll give you an example of that. Back in the day, they've actually expanded it now. They actually went in and built it up a little bit. But that's how it used to be called Mo Gallagher Iba Arena. What used to be down at Oklahoma State. It was like, literally, you're taking the ball out and there are people standing behind you. Like, it was raucous and rowdy like that. There's no greater feeling than to quiet that crowd because it was like they were on top of you. The other places that I like is stadiums that go straight up, because it's like, it seems like the fans are hovering above you. And those are some really intimate times when you're seeing stadiums like that. I like the growth of those types of stadiums. There's really not, in those types of stadiums, there's really not a bad seat in the house. It really isn't.